Please watch the video until the end. Chapter 1: The Night the Lights Lingered. The narrator was a man who kept a careful ledger of small, luminous moments, those seconds when a voice or a chord made the rest of the world tilt gently on its axis. He had followed performers for years, from dusk to dawn rehearsals to triumphal nights and quiet mornings. On a rainy autumn evening in a city that never truly slept, he saw them both for the first time. Evan Moreau had the kind of reputation that made room for contradictions, a golden-voiced singer who had lived too many solitary hours, a star whose name still earned applause but whose eyes betrayed exhaustion. He played in bars, in theaters, on stages big and small. Fame had tempered him into a kind of weathered grace, his hands were calloused in places that mattered. Lila Hart arrived at a midnight open mic because she had nowhere else to try. She carried an old guitar with a crack near the bridge and a pocket of songs that sounded as though they had been stitched from late-night truths and soft, stubborn hope. She sang, and the room folded toward her. Her voice was not yet honed into fame, it was raw as a wound and bright as a promise. The narrator watched Evan among the crowd, slightly apart, drawn by the shape of her melody. When their eyes finally met after her set, the air between them rearranged. Evan, who had watched the industry ingest and discard beautiful things, recognized in Lila something undimmed. He approached with the measured humility of someone who had learned how quickly praise could vanish. Chapter 2: Lessons in the Backroom. He offered to take her on the road, initially as a favor, a chance to see how she performed under lights that moved and crowds that remembered names. The narrator, who knew the calculus of second acts, understood the risk. But Evan saw music the way some people see constellations, a map of wounds and wonders. Lila accepted. She wanted, above all, to be heard. On the bus, between cities and motel rooms, they talked in the kind of sentences that become confessions. Evan taught Lila how to bend a lyric until it meant more than it said. He showed her the small economies of a life spent making sound, how to warm a voice with tea, how to read a room, how to close a song so the silence felt like an answer. Lila gave him something else, a way to laugh in the middle of a song, a cadence that slipped through his guarded lines and reminded him of why he had once begun. Their partnership deepened into an intimacy that had nothing to do with publicity. They wrote late into the night, their hands met on the same page of a notebook and found a groove. The narrator listened to the way Evan's voice softened when he spoke her name and noted how Lila learned the hush that preceded a great song, the patience to let the world arrive. Chapter 3: The Burn of Brightness. As she grew into the spotlight, Lila's songs pulled at larger audiences. Her face began appearing on magazine covers, her songs became the soundtrack of other people's nights. The narrator noted the paradox. The same light that softened her edges also sharpened the cracks in Evan's world. Success is a mirror with no mercy. Evan tried to be content in Lila's glow, but the industry is an ecosystem of measurement, and it whispered comparisons. Where once he had been the rising tide, he felt himself receding. Critics suggested duet dynamics, management encouraged partnership branding, and certain nights felt like a chorus repeating the same line, "She is the future." The strain changed the air between them. Love, which had been their shelter, sometimes turned into an argument about schedules, about small betrayals, a missed call, a headline that left one of them exposed. The narrator watched them navigate this strange topography, moments of fervent tenderness followed by silences so loud they hurt. Yet even in the hardest hours, there were songs that held them together, melodies that reminded each of them of the first night in the bar. Chapter 4: The Road That Knows Too Much. On long drives between cities, Evan's hands on the steering wheel would sometimes tremble, not from the cold but from the tremors of memory, a past tour where a friendship turned to ash, a failed record that had cost him more than money, an old promise he couldn't keep. Lila felt these tremors and tried to love him through them. Sometimes she succeeded, sometimes she could not. One night, after a show that was otherwise triumphal, Evan missed a cue to join Lila on stage. He stood backstage while her voice filled the room, and a darkness gathered in the wings. Later, alone in a dressing room, he confronted the choices that had followed him for years, those compromises and minor catastrophes that become a ledger you cannot erase. The narrator, having watched many artists, recognized the pattern, a man whose demons and regrets preyed on his generosity. He had also seen how love could be a mirror and a blade both. Evan wanted to step back, to let Lila ascend without him tethering her. Lila did not want to be set free in that way. She wanted a partner who would stand beside her in the clearing, not fade into the trees. Chapter 5, Silence That Speaks. Their love tightened into something both fragile and fierce. There were concerts where they performed together and the city seemed to hold its breath. There were nights where Evan's apologies were songs and Lila's forgiveness was a refrain. The narrator wrote about these contradictions as though composing a score: tension, resolution, dissonance, final chord. But life outside the amphitheater kept insisting on its terms. A misread text, a broken promise, a doctor's appointment left unattended, little things stacked until they became a wall. Evan understood his role in building that wall and tried, with everything he had left, to dismantle it. He sought help, he tried to call friends he had pushed away, he laid down a new set of rules for himself. Lila saw the effort, and for a time, they rebuilt. In quiet moments they would sit on the roof of a rented house and listen to a city that hummed its own slow songs. They dreamed of writing a record together, of mornings with coffee and lyric sheets. The narrator believed them there, under the stars, honest and raw, as if the world could still be altered by two people who had learned to keep each other. Chapter 6, After the Final Note. Not all stories resolve in public applause. The narrator, who had learned to accept nuance, tells the ending without theatrics. There were days of joy and days of retreat. Lila's star continued to rise with an intensity that required decisions. Evan's path forked into a quieter trail, one that forced him to confront his limits. In the end, they made a choice not of dramatic separation but of survival. Lila chose to keep singing, to answer the calls that came for her voice, while Evan chose a form of love that was less visible but no less deep, to love with the tenderness of someone who lets go because holding would hurt both of them. They did not vanish from each other's lives, no tragic postcard finale, but they rearranged themselves into new shapes. Sometimes they met in quiet rooms to write, sometimes they exchanged long, careful letters. Their love lived in small courtesies, a recorded harmony sent across time zones, a voicemail left at dusk, a lyric sent in the middle of a tour. The narrator closed his ledger and admitted that this was a love that did not demand finality. It was an honest, imperfect love, shaped by music, by fame, and by the slow work of making peace with who we are. He watched them from the distance of memory and felt grateful that he had witnessed two artists willing to risk everything for something they believed to be true. If you enjoyed this tale, please subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, give the video a like, leave a comment, and share the video.